Okay. Back in the fall of 1965, I read somewhere that the time of the week most people died was at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. Every week, very dependably, the mortality scale would peak at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. And I realized, well, 9 o'clock on Monday morning is when people go back to what we then called the rat race. And so I got to thinking, more people are dying at 9 o'clock on Monday morning than any other time because they're so busy making a living they can't live what they're made of. And so after thinking about that for a while and thinking about my own life and looking at the life of a lot of other people, I came up with this song, which by the time I had finished writing it became my philosophy of life. It's called Ain't Doing a Thing No More. I used to get up in the morning, put myself down on a job, serving a bunch of machinery, pushing keys, buttons, levers, and knobs, busily making a living so I could live when the day was done. No time for becoming, for being or meaning, so I ain't doing a thing no more. I got myself a job in an office as a supervisory hound, talking about company teamwork, pushing papers and people around, busily making a living so I could live when the day was done. No time for becoming, being or meaning, so I ain't doing a thing no more. Well, I went out on the road as a salesman, doubled my monthly pay. Each night I ate the same menu after pushing my products all day, busily making a living so I could live when the day was done. No time for becoming, being or meaning, so I ain't doing a thing no more. Well, I moved my family out to the suburbs to have the freedom of my own backyard, but I very rarely got there, 'cause I had to keep pushing so hard, busily making a living, but barely living when the day was done. No time for becoming, being or meaning, so I ain't doing a thing no more. I couldn't find a job that fit me, couldn't fit any jobs I found, so I created my own space. I stopped all my pushing around. I found something I enjoy doing that I could share with others too. So now I'm becoming, I'm being and meaning, 'cause I ain't doing a thing no more.
Hi, I'm Dan Crothers. Reverend Noel was a member of NTCSL's founding interim board and has ever since served as NTCSL's board chaplain, attending nearly 300 meetings since the summer of 2004. He participates in teaching NTCSL's foundation course and regularly offers self-transformational seminars on the Tao of New Thought, self-dominion, and global transformation. Reverend Noel is a doctorate minister of religious science, ordained in 1989. He has immersed himself in ongoing studies of consciousness, spiritual metaphysics, contemporary cosmology, systems theory, ecology, transpersonal psychology, and psychotherapy, subtle energetics, and other integral perspectives, while sharing and applying his learning in a variety of college, university, editorial, and ministerial settings. He has authored or co-authored several books on the bridging of science and spirit. He is currently co-authoring a book entitled The Science of Causing Outcomes. From 1985 to 2002, Reverend Noel was the senior pastor of several churches of religious science. He is a former columnist for Science of Mind magazine, and from 1979 to 1996 was a faculty member of the School of Ministry, now Ernest Holmes Institute, for the United Centers of Spiritual Living, teaching New Thought-related courses in science, mysticism, philosophy, and ethics on its campuses in Los Angeles, Huntington Beach, San Diego, San Jose, Denver, and Seattle. Wow, it's just a arm-long list of amazing accomplishments already. We're looking forward to interviewing him shortly.
We are rolling.
I come back some other time for other stuff.
Yeah. Well, Noel, you appear to me to be a unique character, and your perception on the world and the way you process information seems to be radically unique.
Well,
I'm really honored to be able to sit with you and pick your mind or just watch your mind work.
Well, thank you. I've always sort of known my mind worked different, but back in the summer of 1965, I was in a Chicago hospital with a diagnosis of leukemia. And I was actually grateful. I was in a room all by myself because they thought in case they were wrong about the leukemia, I might have something contagious. So they put me in this room by myself. So there were no distractions, and I had brought a number of books with me that I hadn't had a chance to read. And for several days, I was reading all of these books. Bucky Fuller, Marshall McLuhan, Margaret Mead, all the great writers of that particular time. And at one point, I had an epiphany. And I had this realization. And it was based on something I read, that more people die at 9 o'clock on Monday morning than any other time of the week. Week after week after week, the mortality rate peaks at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. And I realized, well, that's when people go to work. And I thought about that in the context of all I've been reading, and we're too busy making a living to live what we're made of. And I decided I want to live what I'm made of. So I called the dean of this little college, Kendall College, Methodist Junior College in Evanston, Illinois, where I was teaching at the time, and told him I had this idea for an experimental course on living what you're made of. And we ended up calling it Technology of Modern Civilization in order to get it through the curriculum committee. But for several years, I taught this course under various titles, but it was all about how do we live what we're made of? How do we get out of this trap of making a living, of devoting our freshest and most powerful hours to doing things we perhaps don't even like doing in order to have money, so that we have the evenings and weekends off for parole and good behavior. And at one point, I wrote that song, Ain't Doing a Thing's Thing No More. And that's, my whole life from that point onward, I've been thinking in terms of how to live in such a way that we come fully alive.
Don't you find there's an interference between the world as it is, appears to be, and because everybody holds the same thought in mind, are you found a way to live outside of the rules, out of the world's vision of how it should be or how it is?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
One of the titles for the class I taught was Creating Your Own Space. How, in the midst of this space of jobs and making a living and everything else, how does a person create one's own space and live according to... It was many years later I came across a quotation that says it all. Howard Thurman said, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and then go do that, because what the world needs most is people who have come alive." And so I have, since 1965, managed to always be doing the things that most make me come alive at that particular point in my life. That even included 1 year of just hitchhiking around the country, sort of a semi-homeless by choice, just to get outside the box for a year, and then come back into it. And after that, I entered the religious science ministry. I became an ordained and eventual doctorate minister of religious science. It was when I discovered New Thought, which is really about, the metaphysics of creating your own life, change your thinking, change your life. I realized, oh my gosh, there's a whole spiritual philosophy behind this, what I just sort of stumbled on. And and today there's all kinds of support for this. When I wrote that song and 6 others back in the late 60s, the fellow who wrote the lead sheet for them said, "Noel, you're at least a generation ahead of your time. Nobody's going to understand these songs until you're a lot older."
So you're not only New Thought, but you're way New Thought.
Well, yeah.
But you're here now. So
here
really, somehow we're transcending time. The future is now. We're creating the future now. And
well, my 6-word elevator briefing for New Thought is, reality formation is an inside job. Now, there's this belief in the New Age movement by some people say we create our own reality. Well, I can't buy that. There was an anecdote that used to circulate the internet 10 years ago about this group of scientists who decided that we didn't need God anymore because all of the things that insurance clauses called acts of God men could now do. We could manipulate the genome and the atom and everything else. And so they deputized one of their number to go to God and tell him he could take the rest of eternity off. And God said, "Well, I'm not so sure about that. Are you telling me that you think you could create life from scratch?" And the scientist said, "No problem." He reached down, got a handful of dirt, and God said, No, that's not the way I did it." The scientist says, "What do you mean?" God said, "Get your own dirt." We weave a fabric of reality. We tailor a fabric of our reality that's not itself of our own creation. We create our experience of reality. We don't create reality itself. Reality formation is an inside job. It's how we choose to experience the world that determines what the world's reality is for us.
So the way I look at it, world gives us reality, and then there's our reaction to it.
Well, Nehru once said that life is like a deck of cards. The hand you're dealt is determinism. How you play it is free will. We do get a deck of cards. We don't even know what that reality is, independent of anyone's experience of it. We only know what our experience of it is. And the experience, we create that. Now, we may create it by just copying what everybody else does and make a living, or we may decide to choose to live what we're made of.
What are we made of? How does that, go ahead. How are we made? of? What are we made of? Maybe there's another question. I was hearing another question in that same space.
Yeah.
Not what are we made of, but what am I going to do with it? You know, here I am, what am I going to do with it? Instead of working for a living, how can I create a life?
In the spiritual philosophy of New Thought, each of us is an expression of God. Express, literally, press out. Each of us is an expression, a pressing out of spirit or God. There is something in every one of us that yearns to express, to push itself out, to make itself known, to experience itself. And each of us has an expression and a way of experiencing the world and a way of being experienced by others that's different from anybody else's. I was once teaching a workshop in writing, and one of the ministers in the workshop said, you know, I started writing this book and I realized it's all been said already. I said, well, yeah, everything has been said. There's nothing new to be said, but there's always a new way to say it, and the world hasn't heard it the way you say it. And until the world hears it the way you say it, there's some people that aren't going to get it because they're only going to get it when they hear the way you put it. And so, you know, the universe is marvelously redundant. There are 7 billion of us. Another thing I like to say is that all of us know more about what any of us knows about what each of us knows. And so it's when each of us has the opportunity to live out what he or she knows that all of us can begin to know more than any of us about what each of us knows.
Right. You know, it's interesting. I have a theory, a life theory that I've been working on for a long time. What is it that is going on every single moment? What is going on? And what I've come up with is that here we are, and everything's a surprise. Everything is an unknown. We were thrown in this world, and we didn't know nothing, and we're learning. And what we're always doing is trying to connect with other people to see if they can verify what is true. We need data to understand more. So the sharing that occurs between two people is how that growth and understanding expands. So we need each other to expand.
We absolutely, we require feedback.
Right, exactly. So what's going on every moment? We're trying to get feedback.
The only way I can know myself is in relationship to the rest of the world. If there were nothing for me to relate to, there'd be no way of knowing how I am, who I am, what I am. We require one another to get clear about our own identities.
Yeah, okay.
And it's out of getting clear about our own identities and expressing our own identities that we get off that doing a things thing and start living what we're made of.
Okay, so that living what we're made of is a discovering process that will occur once you let go of doing the things thing.
Well, that's right.
Because maybe we don't know who we are fully. Maybe we're learning it as we go along, but there's still such a great mystery that the discovery of who we are is an endless, expanding awareness.
We may never know who we are, but we can get in touch with how we are, and then we can be that way. And there's this little workshop that we're going to be doing here at the Space on Sunday afternoon, October 8th, from 2 to 5 o'clock, called Coming Fully Alive. And it's all about getting in touch with how we are here to be. The minister at my church frequently tells the congregation, you're here to do what is yours to do. We are here to do what is ours to do. And this workshop, Coming Fully Alive, is all about getting in touch with the particular how of our being in the world, and then how to how to come from living what we're made of rather than just making a living.
Discovering one's personal authenticity towards their own inner direction, and not ignoring it and going into the world to conform, but rather discovering that inside, what really wants to come out.
There is something in every person that wishes to be passionately expressed in the world, and most folks aren't doing that.
Right.
And John Denver said, each of us is a dwelling place of incredible opportunities. At the same time, Abraham Maslow, the psychologist, said, 98% of us die without tasting the nectar of our magnificence. There is a nectar of magnificence in every person. Each of us is the dwelling place of an incredible opportunity. And most of us never fully taste that and fully express that. And my whole life has been about being in touch with that in me as well as I can, and finding ways to get it out.
We'll probably find out in that process our limitations that we think we have, and which is where our fears are residing.
Yes.
And we'll have to start walking through our fears to become bigger in life.
Well, and part of it is making our fears work for us.
Give me an example of a fear.
This is okay. This is pretty big in my life. In 1973, I was diagnosed as borderline autistic. Now, that didn't bother me all that much. I had remitted leukemia, survived 3 kinds of polio simultaneously, lived through rheumatic fever. Yeah, my first wife said I wasn't very healthy. I said, I think I'm very healthy. I survived all 3 of those diseases. So I wasn't, and I feared what would happen if anybody found out about the fact that I'd had that diagnosis. And, in the past few years, I've become aware of the fact that it was, I might have borderline Asperger's syndrome or whatever it is. I can sort of see that as a possibility. But early this year, I read a statistic that changed my total outlook on that. I read that the latest research out of Cambridge and Yale universities indicated that today 1 out of 38 children born is on the autistic disorder spectrum. And I looked at that and I said, well, if 1 out of 38 people being born on the planet is being born into a very, very different experience of reality. Mm-hmm. If 1 out of 38 people on the planet is now forming their reality differently than the rest of us, that's not a disorder of consciousness, that's a new order of consciousness. And if I'm participating in a new order of consciousness, why should I be hiding it? So I created this website and started putting all the positive views of autism as an evolutionary new order of consciousness. And that limit that I honored by keeping it secret, I just put out there, and it's opened all kinds of new routes of communication and new possibilities for me.
Yeah. I know several autistic piano players that are like geniuses.
Oh.
And the guy that can watch the train go by, and when it finishes, he's added up all the numbers on it, So you're saying a new order of consciousness, or something's trying to be born into the human race, a next step forward maybe.
Well, it is, you said something's trying to be born. The word experience, the word experiment, have the same root, P-E-R-I, which means to try. Experience, from trying. Experiment, from trying out. Life is a process of trial and error. We don't really know. Now, Einstein once said, hey, if we knew what we were doing, we wouldn't call it research, would we? We don't know.
Right. Again, what is happening every moment? The seeking to acquire more information about what this world is.
It's trial and error.
Who am I? The big question from Ramana Maharshi or something,
Well, a former Dalai Lama, whenever he was asked, "Who am I?" would say, "Who is it that asks?"
I like that. Good. See?
And that's the answer.
Uh-huh.
We are that which asks the question, "Who are we?" And in that is a mystery that will never be solved.
Well, what if one gets to experience that magnitude that you mentioned in an earlier discussion? The quote from somebody about if a person dies and doesn't get to experience that magnitude or that magnificence.
98% of us die without tasting the nectar of our magnificence.
Yeah.
Abraham Maslow.
Okay, I love that one.
Yeah.
Because when you have tasted that magnificence, then you've got a glimpse of what we really are, or what, personally we are. And then can start living from that place of just amping it up a little bit.
Yeah. So we don't ever have to know who we are. What we really are here to know is what is the nectar of my magnificence. How do I taste this? How do I give the world a taste of the nectar of my magnificence? And so this Coming Alive workshop just created a few simple exercises to help people get in touch with what amounts to the nectar of their magnificence, and then begin changing their life in small steps. And I give people a process that they can use the rest of their lives to keep moving in that particular direction.
Okay, moving forward into more discovery and more creation, not just a humdrum life of working for the man, but it's a life of creation and participation in a larger vision, an unfolding vision into the future, a better world, hopefully.
Judy Garland said, always be a first-rate expression of yourself, not a second-rate expression of someone else.
Yeah.
And so it's, coming fully alive is all about being a first-rate expression, a first-rate version of how you are in the world.
All right. October 9th.
That's October 9th, Sunday, from 2 to 5 o'clock right here at the Space. And the name of the space is I Like It Like That.
All right. See you there.
Okay.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
That's a good little teaser, huh?
Yeah.
We could do this more often, all right?
Well, yeah.
Are we done?
Yeah.